Hey, Disney fans, you're listening to Theme Park Duo Podcast. I'm Bob Gurr, and they've got a bunch of questions for me, so stay tuned.
Hi, and welcome to the Theme Park Duo Podcast. Grab your park map, churro, and hop in line with us as we take you on a coast-to-coast adventure through the world of theme parks, haunts, conventions, and more. Now, here's your hosts, Nikki and Gabriel.
Hello and welcome everybody to episode 25 of the Theme Park Duo Podcast and our season finale. I am one of your hosts, Gabriel.
And I'm your other host, Nikki.
And we are unbelievably excited right now to bring to you our awesome conversation we had with our very, very special guest, Bob Gurr, Disney Legend Bob Gurr.
I know. It's so cool.
It's surreal sitting down and speaking with him, really, because he has so much history with regards to theme parks in general, and for us being these big nerds about it, it's so much fun just to hear those firsthand stories.
Yeah, it really was. It was something I'll never forget, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's very, very special. But before we get to that conversation, I know you guys are really eager to hear it. We want to talk about something that we were able to do recently. We actually got to go to Queen Mary's Chill. So this is Queen Mary. We talk about Dark Harbor all the time. We love their Halloween event, but this is their event for Christmas. And it's all new this year. And we had a freaking blast.
We had so much fun. And I went in kind of with low expectations, just from what I've heard.
Just because you didn't quite know what to expect as well?
Yeah, we've never been before, and just talking to people who have gone in years past, when it was very new, they're still finding their groove, figuring out what they wanted the event to be. I feel like it just wasn't what they envisioned yet. And I feel like this year, they really hit their stride. It was so much fun.
I think they tapped into a market that I don't think they even realized that the people wanted this. It's essentially what they created was like a little mini Epcot on the West Coast.
Yeah, and so much more.
No, yeah. I mean, like, if by describing it as Epcot would do it injustice.
Yeah.
Complete injustice. There's a lot more to this event than just like international sectors of like food and drinks and stuff. But I do have the website pulled up here, and the description for the event basically says, embark on an international holiday expedition at the all-new Chill, featuring the United States' first ever ice adventure park and a touching tribute to cultural traditions from around the world, showcasing a global sampling of food, music, and live entertainment perfect for the holidays. Get a rush of family fun this winter at our 38,000 square foot ice adventure park, featuring ice skating and our ice track, Amsterdam bumper boats, Shanghai Speedway, a zip line, ice shuffleboard, a 2-story, 140-foot long ice tubing slide, and so much more. This one-of-a-kind experience will celebrate the traditions of Christmas from 6 different regions in an exciting exploration of international fare and cultural celebration, dancing and live performances, Sunday night fireworks, a nightly Christmas tree lighting, and visits from Santa and Mrs. Claus, sure to put you in the holiday spirit.
It definitely put us in the holiday spirit.
Not only that, we felt like kids.
Yeah.
Like literal kids, just running around, causing a ruckus, having food, sliding down ice and falling down, bumper boats. I felt like a kid, and that's so much fun.
Yeah, literally with the ice sledding, you're in like inner tubes. We went once and we're like, let's go right back on. Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, we got really pumped.
Yeah.
Really, really pumped.
Yeah.
They also had a lot of really cool walk around characters, which really kind of helped flesh out the feeling and the vibe of the entire area, especially given the fact that they're trying to celebrate a lot of different cultures. So what better than to have a representative for those cultures? And even on top of that, they had like walk around characters that were like in costumes, like a panda, then a gingerbread man, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So some of the walk around characters they had were Germany's Christ Kindle, China's Tea Hostess, Switzerland's Sinterklaas, Holland's Father Time, and of course North America's Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So these are all just different representations and specific cultures' idea of what Christmas is, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
A personification. Like Santa Claus is a personification of Christmas.
Except maybe the tea hostess.
Yeah. I doubt the tea hostess is the personification of Christmas. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, maybe the
Like
panda is.
it's maybe the panda. No, like in a way, like it's something associated with Christmas from those particular cultures.
Yes.
So I'm assuming like the description.
I remember in the tea hostess saying that they were making lanterns. So I'm assuming that was like a traditional.
Yeah, so I mean, like under the tea hostess, it says, excluding elegance and grace, the tea hostess welcomes guests to a rich culture steeped in tradition. An immaculate hostess, she invites guests to enjoy their time in her culture by teaching them the art of tea customs, including the proper way to serve tea and the history behind the many reasons a tea ceremony may be performed.
Yeah.
So this is all stuff that has to do with Christmas and the holidays in other cultures, and I really like it.
I did too.
This added addition of these walk-around characters really made it feel like a theme park. It made it feel like a theme park. And even on top of that, the employees that work there, they're not just wearing Queen Mary shirts. They're in costume depending on what country they're in. And that made it really feel like a theme park.
It did. It was a really nice touch. You just felt like every detail was thought out, and it really showed. Extremely.
And it was warm. It was fun. Warm being like... Atmospherically warm. It was very cold that night, actually.
Yeah.
And
the ice didn't help.
Yeah, the ice didn't help, of course. But I think this is a fantastic event, and I honestly think that they've really, like you said, hit their stride here with what they're doing, and I could only hope that this event gets better and better for the years to come.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many things we didn't even talk about. Like the food was great. The food specific to each culture was pretty darn good.
We tried very hard to try food in a lot of different places.
Their drinks, their specialty drinks for each culture. We tried a few of them. We tried the one at Switzerland?
I think it was it was Holland. It was Holland. It was the Swizzle. Mm-hmm. That was our favorite of the night, I think.
Yeah. Well, I liked mine, the donut. Something.
Well, you had a something jelly donut. I forgot what it was, but it was a very good drink. Both were great.
Yes, and then just all the rides you could do. They're not rides. They're activities. Attractions. Yeah. So there was the sledding. There was the bike tricycling. There was the ice bumper boats.
You did the zip line.
The zip line and the shuffleboard and ice skating. The only thing we didn't do is ice skating. But we did everything else, and it was so much fun.
Well, it's because falling on my ass isn't the best thing in the world.
That's a bad word.
Falling?
Yeah.
Gravity
is offended.
Gravity is offended. Also, ice skating hurts my feet really bad, so I just can't do it.
I think you have weird-shaped feet.
I don't have weird-shaped feet. I'm looking at my feet right now. They look normal. Thank you very much.
Like, it was like instant pain the last time.
It's not instant pain. It's just instant uncomfortable.
You made it seem like instant pain.
Sort of. Well, it was also painful falling on my ass.
Stop saying falling.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, but so we let that one go. But we've been ice skating before. I've never been ice bumper boating before or ice tricycling. So.
That was probably one of the highlights. Those things spun so fast.
Oh, I got really dizzy. And Gabe was like, "Keep spinning. I want to take a boomerang." So I kept spinning for like a full minute.
Spinning forever.
Yeah. So it is all just really fun, and we were running around, and they have like these hanging lights that were all over the place. Everywhere you look, there was hanging lights that they synced up to the music every once in a while, and it was like this little light show. It was just everywhere you looked.
They really covered the place.
Yes.
You know, there was a lot of entertainment to really get going, and I really enjoyed the event. The only downside to the night was I felt like they were working up past the time that we got there to get things going.
Yeah, it was opening night.
This is a thing that's not going to be an issue for people who are going to go after you listen to this.
If you go in a week, completely different experience with like opening night jitters that we had. You know, they weren't staffed enough, and
let's be clear. These are not jitters. These are major hiccups that they did not have ready because they were literally working up into the deadline.
Yeah. So I feel like give it a few days and things will get, fine tuned, and the flow will be better for the, because we just saw a few things that, could easily be just people not quite trained, for the job they were given, or hired at the last minute, so
not having ingredients.
Not everything was fully stocked. So that's stuff that will improve as time goes on.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of a thing with Queen Mary, though, because I know that we had an issue with Queen Mary during Dark Harbor with regards to training staff, with regards to the protocol of what to do in your position.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they need to start training staff just a little bit earlier, and I feel like if they did that, they would resolve a lot of their issues.
They would, yeah. I mean, it's like, it seems like their priority is like, in like the planning and the structure of the event, and not really the infrastructure. So it's something that they can work on.
Of course, and all things aside, it did not hinder our experience to the point where we had any less fun, because this event was ridiculous amounts of fun.
Yeah, it was.
And I would go back in a heartbeat. It could be a little expensive. I know the price point for what you're getting is a little expensive. I know that our friends are going to be going very soon, and the ticket they bought included ice skating, the sleds, or not sleds, but like the inner tube down the big hill, entrance into the park, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which actually, that's for what they paid. I think they paid around $30 maybe, because I think general admission is around $27, $28. So when you do that, you get all these pretty fantastic things, and that's really not that bad of a price.
That's good. And then if you wanted to add on a few more while you're there, that wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah, it adds up for sure.
Oh, it will.
It definitely adds
yeah.
up, but that's any place.
Any place would do that. And then as far as like if you want to eat while you're there, I know that there is a kind of a tasting card. It's called Taste of Chill passport, and it actually looks like a passport, and it's a stamp card with 6 stamps that you can get. You can try food from each country. It's $44, but I think you could easily share that with someone else.
Yeah, like some of the places food wise give you a lot more than others. Like I had stroganoff, and that was a really hefty serving. But then when we went to China and we got some of the pot stickers dumplings, that wasn't that much.
Well, I got 5 dumplings. You got less.
Like 5 dumplings to share with 2 people isn't that much.
Well, yeah, but if you're splitting like 6 tastings throughout the night, like even if you split each thing, that's 3 tastings each. That's a
good
lot.
point. That's a good point.
So I think you could.
And the different countries that you can go to get these different drinks and foods are Germany, Switzerland, China, Russia, Holland. Those are the major places. And then of course they have the North Pole, but that doesn't really count as a country.
Yeah.
Santa lives there. So
it's Santa's country.
Santa lives there. So I mean that's not so bad. But let's jump back to price really quickly, because they have like first class passports as well. That cost $32.95. They also have the Grand Voyage passport, which costs $39.95. Obviously the children's prices go down a little bit with that.
Yeah.
So that's not so bad. And then they also, something that we didn't even talk about was they have the 4D theater open. They have the 4D version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and it's the version that everyone loves. It's the stop-motion animation one.
Yeah, it's super cute. It's about, 20 minutes?
Yeah, I'd say so. Maybe a little less.
There's a little sing-along at the end. It was really cool.
It's just cute. Yeah. I mean, like, it's not, like, super 3D or anything.
Yeah.
It was just, if you like that movie, you'll enjoy this.
Yeah.
It's just a good time. It's really cute.
Yes, it is.
Overall, I think Chill is a home run. I think what they've done and what they have on their hands is quite a hit.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
Really, really excited to see where that goes. And actually really excited to go check it out again, hopefully, before Christmas, because I had so much fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I want to go back too.
Yes. So, but let's not hesitate any longer, Nikki.
Uh-huh.
And let's get in to our interview with Bob Gurr.
Here we go.
So we're here with our very special guest today, wonderful person by the name of Bob Gurr. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's easy as pie to have you come in here on a kind of a cold, cloudy, winter-like day and come in with a little bit of hot coffee and we can tell stories.
Exactly, and I think it's fun to kind of bundle up, tell stories. Yeah, exactly. You said. I know that you're happy because you get cold really easily.
I know it's very cold outside. It's as cold as it can get in California. But
when we were
got my hot tea.
When we were gonna get the coffee, she didn't want to leave the car to get the coffee because it was cold outside. Look at him though; he's perfect. He's in a sweater.
Yeah,
You're not wearing the sweater.
I wish I was in a
You're wearing
sweater.
your theme park capris.
I know. Long story.
Yeah, very long story. But obviously, we're here to talk about your career and your life, and you've done an incredible amount of projects over your lifespan or over your career, and a lot of things that people recognize every single day. And I think a lot of times people overlook too, where it's like every single time you go to Disneyland, every single vehicle you see, you've touched. And a lot of incredible attractions as well. But I think what's interesting for me, at least from our perspective as people who are fans of what you've done, and Disney nerds in general, is where your upcoming was and how you grew up and how you got to where you are today and how you built your career.
How it all started, basically.
Essentially. So I wanted to know where you grew up. Like, how was your upbringing and where did automotives come into play and how did that become an interest?
Well, the curious thing is I was very good selecting my parents so that I was able to, no, this is serious. You have to select really good parents so that you get all the DNA that eventually can be very useful. Because by the time you understand you're a sentient being, which is usually around 18 months, you're beginning to be aware of things. And usually the child always says mama or dada, which is what the parents are looking for. And in my case, it was airplane.
That was
which was a great disappointment to my father. And I was probably around between 2 and 3. We lived, oddly enough, 2 blocks down from Walt Disney in the Los Feliz district of Los Angeles area.
That's where we live right now.
Yeah, and I didn't know this, of course, till decades later. But there was something about cars and airplanes that were just totally intriguing to me right from the get-go. And so I think that was the establishing interest right off. I have no idea what the origin was, except that possibly just looking and listening, those were the things that were the standout things in the world I was getting used to as a little tiny child. And that never changed. The interest has always remained the same. Of course, going through junior high school and high school, the interest became a little bit more professional in that I wanted to be an aircraft engineer, but my math was so bad that that was not going to happen. But automobile design, in those days, it was called styling, which really didn't require mathematics. It was much more art. Today, automotive design, it's all blended together. The exterior, interior, engineering, manufacturing, all of that is a big blend. But in those days, it was a separate thing called styling. But I went to Art Center School, graduated with a degree in industrial design, had a General Motors scholarship paying for about half my schooling, got hired by General Motors about a month before graduation, got sent to Detroit, and corporate rating was going on all the time in those days, and I didn't know anything about that because I'm only 20 years old. I got rated by a guy from Ford Motor Company and was hired into the Ford Motor Company. It's a more complicated story, but the end result was General Motors paid for half of my education. I wound up at Ford, which meant I burned the bridge to General Motors badly. And within 2 weeks of working at Ford in Detroit in the advanced styling section, which is the best place you could be, I could see it was going to be a dead-end job after all that thought from being a little kid. So I endured Detroit for a year and a day, and then just suddenly, spur of the moment, I turned around, came back to California, where I was born, of course, and formed my own company called R.H. Gurr Industrial Design. I went and bought a rubber stamp with the name. I bought a J.C. Penney invoice pad, and I was in business.
That's quick.
Yes. In about a year, a little over a year, I get a call to go to the Disney studio. And at that time, I had seen pictures in the Los Angeles Times of this new amusement park. And also at the same time, being friends of Iwerks, I went to school with one of his sons. We bummed around together, same car club, go fishing, go hunting, and all that stuff. But Iwerks never told me who he was and what he did. I just know he worked at Disney. Not until I go to the Disney studio, I find out that he and Walt were instrumental in starting the company, back in the 20s. But nevertheless, the Iwerks family would have Sunday dinner about once a month, and they'd invite me over. And Iwerks used to like to show little black and white movies of current events on the back lot at Burbank Studio. And there was this little chassis of a car running around, didn't have a body on it. There was another car there that was a commercially available German amusement car that was really ugly, but it had the name Disneyland written on it. So I go out to the studio and I wonder if Iwerks' little movie of that little chassis and the fact there's an amusement park, they need somebody to design a body. Well, that was a good guess because I met Dick Irvine, who was head of all the designers for Disneyland. This is in October of 1954. And I could see immediately what was needed. And I said, well, I'll make some pictures and come in here on Saturday because studio was open on Saturdays. Walt paid people for 5 days a week, but you work 6 days a week. Try doing that today. But people so loved Walt. They so loved that idea of Disneyland, they would do that. I think by the second week, Walt suggested, well, there's a lot more things to do here. And I jokingly said, well, maybe I ought to quit my day job and come on over here. And he signed me up immediately. And 27 years later, I had left Disney, formed my own company again, this time GURR Design Incorporated, and did another 20 years of design. So that's the synopsis of what amounted to 45 years and right around 250 projects. Some really big, took many years. Some are quick little jobs, only a couple of weeks. So it was a giant variety. The unique part is I never did anything over. Every job was new, and almost all of them were something that had never been done before. So in theory, I never got good at anything. But the joy was I always had something new that didn't exist. And that's what I love to do, is to make stuff that's never been seen before. And that's why when I took toys apart when I was 4 or 5 years old, I took the toys apart, but they never went back together very well. So my father figured out I needed what would be a precursor of the Lego toys, the Erector set, and the Tinker toys, and now I'm a happy kid. I can make things that don't exist.
Yeah.
So those are the threads that somehow got started and built an entire career on it.
It's pretty incredible. And as a kid, the difference between you as a kid and somebody else is looking at the airplanes and the cars that you mentioned. The difference between you and the other kids is you said, that's cool. I want to know how that works. I want to figure it out. As opposed to the other kids that see that and say, oh, that's really cool, and then keep moving on with their life. You wanted to know how to dissect these things and figure out how they worked, which is really cool because that's the beginning of this entire amazing career, as you said. And when it comes to creating things that don't exist, that must be pretty daunting when somebody puts that project on your desk, right?
Not at all. The key word is curiosity. When people ask about Walt, what were his characteristics? Curiosity was the giant one, and it also, all of the Imagineers that I work with, they also had that curiosity. The curiosity, in a way, you could say it's the genesis of why so many people are self-starters. They're self-educated. Sure, they get college education, they get specific education, but they're already self-taught people. And that's all driven by this concept of curiosity. Well, naturally, if you're the little kid and you take the toys apart, it's because you're curious. Perfectly normal kids will play with a toy. It's a precious thing, that your parents have given you. But I want to know how they work. I want to see the insides. So that set the stage for everything I ever did, right up to today. I want to know how stuff works, and I'll gladly take something apart to find out how it works. Or I'm always snooping around, in a public library in those days, always snooping around on the internet, constantly wanting to know about stuff, how stuff works. Well, stop and think a minute. There's a lot of people who have that kind of a mind. Walt was like that very, very much. That puts you in a frame of mind that when, say, a Walt Disney would come up to you, say like in October of 1958, and say, Bobby, we found a monorail company in Germany, and here's some pictures of their monorail car, but I don't think it's very good looking, so I want you to get started on a monorail for Disneyland. End of meeting, end of suggestion, no specifications, no further words as to what it's supposed to look like. Okay, now you said the word daunting. I didn't see that as daunting. I saw that as, oh wow, I get to do something right from the scratch. And very quickly I could see the problem with a monorail in what we call German saddlebag. In other words, it's like a loaf of bread with a slot in the bottom sitting on a stick.
Yeah.
By necessity. And how do you make that graceful? Well, you're going to have the slot in the bottom of the vehicle in any event. So how do you hide that? Well, you have a kind of a pointy shape. And then the other thing that you do, you make it more like a fuselage where, it kind of tucks in the waist, and then it flares out again for the lower part. And you make sure the colors are different. In other words, the lower part is going to be the color of concrete. And then you look at a Buck Rogers rocket ship of the late 1930s, and it always had these little sled runners, if you recall what that looked like, because it's going to land on a planet, and it'd slide to a halt on the planet, just like a little sled little kids would use. Well, that combination of shapes mask the fact that you have this hole in the bottom of the train. Your eye only sees those major shapes, and that was just so logical. It came in about 10 minutes. On a couple of days later, in my house one morning, I made a sketch, and I thought, aha, it's a real simple answer. It's a kind of shape and camouflage. And then the rest, I came in, the first day of work right after that, and I couldn't wait to draw the picture of the thing. So that famous drawing called Monorail Crossing, that drawing was made off that one little sketch, because there was something about an instantaneous answer that you could see in your mind. And this was, again, not the slightest bit daunting. And everything I've ever done ever since, it's like when somebody says, we need this or we need that, it was like, because the curiosity has already filled my head with so many things that I don't know anything about, but they're all kind of related in a way. It's almost as if when somebody says, I want you to do something that's never been done before, so how are you going to do that? If you had never been curious, you are stuck. But if you've been curious, your head is filled with thousands and thousands of things, not all of which you will ever use, but some of them come to mind immediately, and you get started right off the bat. That's the only way I can try to explain that. And that has happened with every project I've ever been asked to do. I never saw things as being stalled or challenging. It was usually a case of, say, hey, there's several ways to do this. So if you want to make a decision, it's like, well, which of the ideas might get the farthest soonest and might work out? Mm-hmm. So in other words, let's say you got 4 or 5 ideas. You start number 1. Well, maybe that's not going to work. Well, I got number 2 and 3. Let's see if that'll be better. Mm-hmm. And it goes very quickly in your mind. Mm-hmm. But what you want to do, you want to get it visible enough quickly in some sketches so that the people that you're working with have a cursory idea what direction you're headed, and then they can see their part in the job. That's basically how it works.
So you really like the blank paper. The blank paper for you is something that's really fun and adventurous in a way.
Yeah, Marty Scars, always talked about the blank piece of paper. And he made the distinction between the people that were terrified to be handed a blank piece of paper, whether you're a lawyer or a doctor or an artist or what, and the people that saw that as, oh, wow, I got a fresh start my way. Most of the Imagineers always saw it that way, and there's a lot of people who are conventionally minded, conventionally trained in college. They're terrified of the white piece of paper because there's nothing on it. They're more comfortable to have a whole bunch of specifications and requirements handed to them so that they can get started. So there's two different mindsets, and Marty expressed it beautifully in that white sheet of paper as either terrifying or a terrific invitation.
And I could totally see the parallel in what I do for that because, I'm an editor, and when you look at your timeline, there's nothing in it. You have all this information to be working with, and there are people who need extreme direction when working on a project, or those like myself that look at that timeline and I look at all the pieces and I get excited because I'm like, okay, how can I make the best possible product with what they've given me in that timeline? And it's so fun to see the progress of that build out because you have started from nothing and then all of a sudden it's these peaks and mountains of images and pictures and sound, and it's so intricate, and I think that's so much fun that you're able to do that. And I know that you mentioned that when Walt came to you and said, hey, I want a monorail, let's do that, and just walked away. Was that kind of what happened all the time? He would say, hey, this is interesting, I think we should work on this, and he would just leave? Or would he give more direction?
Oh, no, he never gave more direction. I'm not sure how he did it with everybody else, to do with animation, movies, television. But in my case, a conversation would start either by, he's in my office talking to me about something, or he talks to my immediate boss, Roger Berge Sr., who managed the machine shop and was in charge of all the railroad, all the new attractions. And maybe Roger would walk in and say, Walt was just here. He wants you to get started on. Mm-hmm. And there was no description of, like preceding the monorail was the little Viewliner train, which a lot of people don't remember because it was only there like less than 2 years.
Yeah.
It was a case of Walt had the northeast part of Tomorrowland. They took out the circus that didn't work, and now they had an open area. And he had in his mind to do the 1959 project, which was going to turn out to be 5 new attractions. But in the meantime, we need something in the northeast corner of the park. And Walt had said, railroads are cheap and easy. He's got a guy by the name of Tony who can lay track. All we need is some rail, some spikes, some plates, and some ballast, and we got a railroad. And, oh, by the way, Bobby can come up with a train that'll go on that. And that's the only instruction. The only specific thing was it will be a 30-inch gauge. And that was the only specification for it. And I saw it as, how about a streamlined train? It's Tomorrowland. Oh, the General Motors train of tomorrow that runs up by Las Vegas. Well, that's a good-looking shape, typical General Motors type of design. So the design fell into place extremely quick.
Yeah.
It didn't take very long to design and engineer the train because it was going to be a little temporary thing anyway. But everything that he asked me to do, it was never a specification other than something like a railroad gauge or like Matterhorn. It was a case he showed me a typical bobsled, that runs on sled runners, runs down an ice chute, and he's going to have a bobsled, which we can't use ice in Anaheim, so we put wheels on the bottom. But the design of the vehicle just fell into shape, just almost automatic. Mm-hmm. I can't explain it any simpler than that. Mm-hmm.
Which is fantastic. Yeah. That's really, really cool. And I know that you're really into cars and automotive stuff, so that was the basis of where you started everything. When you started building all the vehicles on Main Street, that must have been pretty exciting because you got to build and design your own cars at that point.
And do you have a favorite?
Oh, yeah. Do you have a favorite? Is that like choosing your favorite child?
Well, okay, let's say I did the Autopia car first. Then the next vehicle, Walt wanted an antique car on Main Street. And because I fussed around with cars in the auto shop in high school, and I fussed around with cars anyway, And I was always going to junkyards, seeing how things are built. So I had a lot of background knowledge about cars. I also had a knowledge of antique cars. I had a book called Floyd Clymer's Treasury of Early American Automobiles. So I was very aware of the authentic details of different periods of early American vehicles. So building a car is actually very simple. First thing you're going to need what we call a powertrain. Mm-hmm. That starts with a radiator, an engine, a flywheel housing, a transmission, a drive shaft, and a rear end, and brakes, and something for a front axles. And that's all store-bought stuff. So you use different resources to figure out what parts you could buy and stick them together for a powertrain. Okay, now you got that. Okay, wheels. Well, that's going to be easy. We need a modern tire. So we pick a tire size. Then, okay, well, we'll make wheels out of aluminum instead of wood, but we'll make them so they look like wood. Okay, that's easy. Now we got wheels, powertrain, everything. Well, there's nothing to a chassis of a vehicle. It's some rectangular tube welded together, which we call a ladder frame. And on top of that, you build a body out of very rudimentary, simple sheet metal. And in the case of antique cars, fenders, for example, a metal shop has tools that can roll up these little edges and have little molding sections on them. That's all standard practice. So you just simply sketch up, draw up stuff. Different shops can build all the parts, stick it all together. Diamond pattern upholstery is standard. Everybody knows how to do that. And voila, you have a car. It's as simple as that.
For me, I'm like, whoa. As simple as that.
Right. So we had the red car, and then the year later we had the yellow car. And then a year after that, Walt came into my office one day, and I said, "Say, Walt, we don't have a fire engine on Main Street. We used to have the horse-drawn one, which was not practical." And Walt says, "No, we don't." And the accounting department, a little while later, phoned up and said the project number for the fire engine is, and they gave me the number. So, yes, I'm going to have a fire engine because I want a fire engine. Because I drove Ward Kimball's fire engine in 1916 American France many years before. But what I didn't realize when the fire engine got down to Main Street, Walt wanted a fire engine too. So if you saw a lot of pictures of Walt when he would have visiting guests, he loved to drive that fire engine, drive him around in that, because now that was his fire engine, but it's actually my fire engine. So my favorite attraction to Disneyland, of course, is my fire engine.
I think for us in particular, we really love the double-decker bus.
I love the omnibus.
The omnibus, exactly. We just find that it's such a different view of Main Street.
Front row on the second level, and it's just like the view of the castle when you turn the curve. It's just
when you turn that corner, you get the most perfect view of
Walt,
the castle.
Walt suggested that. He was just, he would sometimes come in my office and just chat a little bit about something. And in the way that I suggested the fire engine, he had suggested in early 1956, he says, "Say, Bobby, why don't we have a double-deck omnibus like they had in England?" And I says, "Well, I know where there's a double-deck omnibus. It's over in Traveltown, right just south of the studio. I can get some dimensions of how they're built, because their American ones were made by a company called Yellow Coach and Fagel. And my father, actually, when he came to California, he was a driver of omnibuses on Sunset Boulevard."
Wow.
So yeah, you have all these connections. So Walt
lines up perfectly.
Yeah. So Walt said, I got a dinky toy in my office. I'll be right back." So he goes up to the office, comes back, and gives me this little tiny metal dinky toy of a typical British omnibus. But I could see right away a combination of a style that would be more American and related to about 1910, somewhere in there. And obviously, we're not going to design a whole bus from scratch. So I figured out what size it ought to be, how we could do that. And I went up the street to to an International Harvester truck dealer, and I went in there and I started inquiring about different truck chassis. And in those days, you can actually buy just the chassis of what we call a beer truck, which is called a Z-drop frame beer truck, because that'll give you the low floor that we would need. Now I got a whole car. You see, all the parts we need there for function. Now the rest is just going to be body. And remember, I'm designing this with production drawings for a bus within, I'd barely been there a year. And,
Jeez.
But again, because you're curious, you kind of know how stuff is built. An omnibus is actually very, very simple. It's just a bunch of 1.25" square tube covered in aluminum sheet metal and a bunch of little details, a seat, a radiator shell, cute little hood, cute little fenders and some Rushmore headlamps of that period. So right away, you combine a bunch of stuff and then you design a body structure that goes on an existing chassis. What that means now is at Disneyland, we have a modern truck that looks 1910. And it does exactly what Walt wants. And it's easy as pie.
And it's not
for me, let's say, yes.
For you, yes. For you, it's easy as pie. For us, it's like, what? Yeah, and I mean, then you have something that's never going to break down because it's modern parts that looks antique, which is fantastic.
In fact, as time went on, when we had General Motors come in and sponsor a lot of Disney things in the mid-1970s, we had to remove the International Harvester chassis out from underneath the body and put a GMC chassis in there. It sounds crazy because of the sponsor's name. The body will come right off, take the fenders off, take the radiator shell, all that stuff off, put the General Motors chassis underneath it and put it all back together again. Same car.
Is that pretty much?
Yeah.
Is that how you kind of attacked designing, was as simplistic as possible so that things didn't break down?
Oh, absolutely. In my DVD, there's people that have watched how I worked, and they explain things about the simplicity. A lot of times you'll have a trained engineer and they want to be sophisticated. They want to show everybody how clever they are and how they make stuff, quite complex. But complex is usually stupid because the more parts you have and the more tricky they are, the higher maintenance and higher cost you may get into. So the general philosophy is, you get yourself started on an idea. There's a whole bunch of parts going to be required for any kind of machine. Keep looking at it and try to reduce the parts. Keep reducing them all the way down. And it's a mental thing you do literally every hour to simplify. You get anything down to where you can't reduce it anymore, and it'll still work.
Yeah.
That's always been the target. The end result is it'll probably cost you less, and the parts that you don't put on a machine are the parts you never replace and you never maintain. So I mean, it's so obvious, but a lot of people completely miss that. Now, had I been a trained engineer, I would like to demonstrate how smart and clever I am by making complex mechanisms. It's in the nature of highly trained engineers, particularly if they have a degree. Since I'm not a trained engineer, I've had no engineering training whatsoever in my life, I saw things as how simple can I do it, and I don't have to show off that I'm a smart engineer. I just want to get the job done in the simplest possible way because I want the machine to work, and the simpler machine is the one that's going to work.
Yeah, and that seems to range from the cars on Main Street all the way to something as massive as King Kong. Because I know that you and I have had a long conversation about King Kong before in the last show that I had you on. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it, it looks like this really massive structure that's incredibly complex. It must have all these moving parts and all this stuff. But when you break it down and you look at it, it's relatively simple. And the thing worked all the time. And King Kong was very impressive.
Yes, because when you have a great big giant machine, I think some designers will make a mistake. In other words, they'll envision something of a smaller size, with the components, the size of the materials and structural elements, and then they blow it up to a big size, and those parts go up with that size, and that's a fatal mistake. There's a very famous creature about that size in a park in Florida that followed that kind of a principle without thinking that what do you want to do every few seconds. Somebody's going to see it for a few seconds. What does that figure have to do? What does it have to look like? You can imply what that figure is, the size and what it's doing with a light, a little bit of movement without having a giant machine. In fact, that machine is so big that the structural engineers that were designing the building for the ride did not want that machine connected to the building, so it had had its own foundation, a massive thing. It was very impressive. After about 2 years, it began to fail, and nobody seemed to know what to do with it. But the lessons of King Kong were there for everybody to see, that as you make something big, the relative space inside becomes much, much better. You have much more air inside the machine, and you have plenty of room for structure, but you minimize the structure by making a structure that's very, very direct. And in the case of King Kong, it's a massive machine. You don't want it to fall over if something fails. So you counterweight his feet so that where his hip joint is, the center of gravity is below the hip joint. That means whatever that figure does, and if the power failed or a cylinder failed or something, it'll simply stop moving and bob upright and go to a static position driven by gravity, not by any kind of power.
Yeah.
These are elemental things. A lot of times the engineers will, in their desire for sophistication, they'll forget there is a simple way to do that stuff.
Yeah. And it won't get the affectionate name of Disco Yeti.
Yes.
I'm going to ask that one there. I don't want to keep asking questions that feel like you're not talking.
So moving on to something a little smaller scale, how was it working on Lincoln?
What I didn't know was that the 4 projects at the New York World's Fair, there was going to be this Lincoln exhibit. I was unaware of what was going to be in it. And one day, really late in 1963, I think right around October, Walt called Roger Brugge and myself over to the studio and showed us a small room that I didn't know existed in the machine shop. And I saw this Lincoln figure sitting in a chair, and I noticed that there was a wall right behind the chair, and it had some mechanisms out in the back of that thing. And Walt was very irritated, and I was surprised to see this because I thought I knew everything going on there, but that was something that had escaped my eye. And he said, Bobby, I want half as much weight and twice as many motions. And I had never worked on a human being ever. I just didn't know that much about them because I'm a car guy.
Mm-hmm.
Very different.
Yeah. Now, because I was curious about stuff, I was interested in aircraft, interested in vehicle structures. I instantly saw Lincoln as an airplane fuselage with little tiny aircraft bearings, super lightweight stuff. It was going to have a lot of air cylinders, air servos inside it. And with no further instruction than maybe a 2-minute meeting, I was handed the job of designing a mechanical Abraham Lincoln. Now, for several years, guys had been working on animated heads for a long time and had developed animated heads really, really good in the machine shop. Also, the hands, a long-term project working on hands. So the hands were good, the head was good, the body was no good as far as the mechanical apparatus. So I'm busy on other jobs, primarily Ford Magic Skyway. So in addition to continuing work on the Ford Skyway, over about a 90-day period, I came up with a mechanical design of the Lincoln, the body, minus the head, minus the hands, but including an elevator to run it up and down, with the idea that should Lincoln fail at night, we can retract him into the basement and work on it. turned out we never used the elevator. The Lincoln was turned out to be a very reliable machine. Everything about it, all the fabrics, clothes, skin, electronics, pneumatics, hydraulics. Everybody did a really good job. So that Lincoln was very reliable.
So Walt must have been really happy when you were able to make it much lighter.
Yes, in fact, the fact that we could do that design, the mechanical design, so fast that on faith, I would literally run the production drawings from Glendale over to Burbank to the studio where the guys are building the parts. Now, normally you get all the drawings done, have an assembly drawing, and then you put a machine together. Well, we had absolutely no time whatsoever. So it was a case of I would make layouts by hand, pencil and paper, and work out all the details and the layouts, give it to a couple of draftsmen. They would draw the drawing. Most of the drawings were kind of small parts. And I'd take them over every day to the studio, and the guys would just take the drawings. Okay, we'll build it. We don't know how it works, but we'll just build all the parts. And within a very short time, we were sticking stuff together, and things mostly fit. You got to file little edges here and there, things like that. And then I went back to working on the Ford stuff, so I never did see the Lincoln for months until it was opening at the New York World's Fair.
Oh, goodness.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did that feel when you saw that?
It was very spooky because, well, no, I had to learn about how human bodies work, where the joints go, what are the motions. And Walt asked me if they would take a movie of a actor, and then I could run it on a moviola machine and see where all the joints are going to go on. And I said, say, that'd be a terrific idea. So I think within about a week, he asked me to come over on studio on a Saturday morning and said, I got an actor in there, Royal Dano, and I got a script for him, and we got a sound guy and a camera guy, and we got the mirror. We had set up with mirrors so that I could get a front view and a side view of the action that I could then run on a moviola machine. And it turned out that the guy did his run through with the script. And I thought that was pretty good, a good sounding actor. And then Walt said, no, you don't have it right. And I was kind of embarrassed for the poor guy. And then we did a second take, and I thought the second take was worse. It wasn't very good. And again, Walt says, no, do that over again. And I thought, oh, my goodness, all we want is a moviola strip. Why is he pestering this poor guy? And I remember the guy kind of grabbed his coat and gave a sigh. He just went, ah. And then he did a third take, and it was very strange because I thought, oh, this is awful. And then right at the end of that, Walt jumps up in front of us. There's only just a handful of us sitting on these apples and half-apple boxes in the studio, and he starts leading us, few people, leading us in the Battle Hymn of the Republic. I figured out later what Walt had in mind. He knew the end of the show, the clouds are going to turn into the American flag, and that was the music he wanted to play. What I didn't realize was the whole thing was a plot to get Royal Dano to do the voiceover as a very, very irritated Lincoln.
Oh.
Oh. So when I heard Lincoln for the first time, I thought, oh, the man as a president was having a terrible, terrible time. Mm-hmm. The voiceover had to be Lincoln. And Walt, in 3 takes, squeezed that out of poor Royal Dano. And of course, 2 days later, I have my moviola strip. I've got it on the machine, and they sent me a great big machine, if you know what a moviola is.
Yeah.
And it's got a little screen, and I could run the film back and forth, frame by frame, and I could figure where the body joints are going to go.
Yeah.
And do it from that. And that was a super help to give me a lesson in human physiology very, very quick. So that whole job went really, really fast. But it's because you saw Lincoln not as a conventional looking thing. You saw it as an airplane, which means super lightweight tubing, little tiny bearings, the kind of stuff that we could be very, very lightweight. to have it so it would be a reasonable weight. I think a lot of people, when anybody hands them a job, if they're curious, they've gathered a bunch of information, they're already ready to go in a new direction, and they're not scared. They're just, I could figure that out. Let's go.
And I know that you have a rather large framed, schematic of Abe Lincoln on your wall. Is that the original one that you drew up for?
No, that drawing is a what we call technically it's called an assembly drawing or a final assembly drawing. That was not done until many, many months later, after Lincoln had been built, tested, shipped, and was running. One of my draftsmen, a young man by the name of Tom Hogsett, was a super drafter, and he says, "Bob, the machine is so pretty. Can I make an assembly drawing of it?" Well, we don't need an assembly drawing. We're done already. But he wanted to do it, so I managed to fiddle around with project job numbers, because every job has to have a job number. And over a period of a couple of months, he would work on his regular work, and then when he gets a few minutes, he'd work on that drawing. And it turned out to be one of his absolute best drawings I've ever seen a draftsman ever do, because he did a little shading and details. So that's strictly a piece of art as a labor of love that Tom did. And now there's a lot of copies of that drawing. People have taken pictures of it. I think people make a pilgrimage to my house to take a picture, a picture of that drawing.
There's a lot of things in this house that I think people want to make a pilgrimage to see.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting right next to this animatronic hippo, and then also over there is a Mr. Toad's car. So, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of stuff in here that people would really like to see.
Yeah.
So, moving on from Disneyland, when Walt decided to make Walt Disney World, when he was making that decision, it must have been really different because of the scale and the scope of what he wanted to do in that area, particularly the transportation systems. Was there any differences between transferring what you've done at Disneyland to Walt Disney World?
Yes, the minute we got started on Walt Disney World, it was quite obvious we were going to have big transportation systems, at least for the Magic Kingdom and the hotels. We wanted to tie all that together with a monorail. So I had just finished the design of the Mark III monorail for Disneyland, and the Mark IV monorail was done almost in parallel with the Mark III. It was the same basic chassis, but longer and wider and with an entirely different body because it had to be fully enclosed due to the environment in Florida. So for a number of years, the monorail projects all kind of blended together over a pretty large number of years. And then at the same time, there was thoughts with the original concept at Epcot that there would be major transportation corridors. And so the company was always exploring how are they going to handle the great numbers of people that Walt thought eventually might be there. So the idea was eventually we would have this Epcot, and then gradually the World Showcase got into it, so it became quite a blended job. But before the decision was made to expand the monorail, what we would call the 1971 Mark IV monorail system, which was around the Magic Kingdom, before that was decided to simply keep that same train and expand it to now the new location where Epcot would be. They asked me to look at several things. We wanted to look at a ground-based transit because monorail beamways are very, very expensive. So we looked at two different things. One was taking the Mark IV monorail body and putting it on a ground-based chassis. So in other words, it's like a train of like a long bus, maybe like a 4 to 5 car articulated bus. It had a really good looking cab in the front, and it had a gas turbine engine and a General Motors Allison transmission in it, and we called that the Turbo Tram. And I made a lot of drawings of that train, and in fact we visited several companies that made both diesel engines and the gas turbine engines because, we wanted to be really, really advanced. Somewhere along the line, those drawings got lost, but I made a lot of pictures of this thing. So if you visualize a monorail running on the ground, it doesn't have the fins. It's just mostly just the fuselage, but it had this really good-looking advanced cab in the front with this gas turbine engine in it. I have figured out the whole drivetrain, the transmission, the axles and everything, how the gas turbine engine would fit. Because a small gas turbine has a lot of power for the volume of the thing. And at the same time, there was, that was called turbo tram because we're going to have a turbine engine. And then the other thing, the idea was having super capacity for the north-south corridor that would be going through an Epcot. They said, why don't you have two monorail beams side by side, about maybe 10 feet apart, something like that. And in those days, the Boeing 747 became popular as a super wide-body double aisle airplane. And they said, well, why don't you make a wide monorail, and it'll simply run on two monorail beams.
That's really cool.
With a very similar suspension. So the train was, the body was quite wide. I think it was somewhere almost 15 feet wide.
Wow.
So it's still smaller than a Boeing 747, the fuselage. But the efficiency of the amount of people we could put in those cars was really, really big. And we got pretty far in it, the overall configuration. It was a strange-looking thing. It looks like you take a monorail and you split it apart, and it's got this great big wide windshield on the front end of the thing, and it's sitting on two beams. And I forget the capacity, but boy, it could carry a lot of people.
Yeah.
It would load in the station exactly the same way, because as far as the station is concerned, and one beam. And the side of the train, it would load exactly like a regular monorail, but it's really wide.
It just needs to be wider.
Yeah, and that was called the dual rail. And we had one of our designers, a fellow by the name of Bill Casey, did some very good-looking artistic pictures of that. And once in a while, I come across a picture of that dual rail. And most people don't know about those kind of developments, so we put a lot of work into, exploring what we ultimately should have. But economics said, no, the Mark IV monorail we've got, we'll just add a lot more beamway for the Epcot line, and we'll just build more of the train because the train works well, and then we'll wind up with 10 six-car trains after a while, or for the monorail system.
Were you disappointed when they said that?
No, because we're always exploring new ideas constantly, because what most people don't realize, for every attraction we build in a park, we've probably got a dozen that we thought about and built models of and explored, and then for various reasons, sometimes the design wasn't going to make sense, even though it looked like a cool idea. But sometimes things don't work out. And the good part is when they don't work out or they're in the design stage, that's good. But there's still things that are attractions that do get built that went so far in the design before anybody really thought about it very carefully, what the pros and cons are. Two recent ones are, we had a thing called Luigi's Tires, and we had a thing called Rocket Rods.
Yep.
Which actually,
rocket rods.
Yeah, millions of dollars get spent, but because the idea wasn't well thought out to begin with, they do get as far as production. But most of them, they only go so far, and then they just sort of go on our backlog of goofy ideas.
Backlog of goofy ideas is always really entertaining, though. I always find it to be entertaining because you could see what could have been.
Yeah, I would love to see someday, although Imagineering would never do it, I would love to see a program or a book or something about all the things that we looked at that looked like they might be successful, except when you went far enough, you could see they weren't going to be successful, and drag those out of the things that never were.
Yeah.
But there doesn't seem to be much interest in that. And I can certainly see some ideas people would say, well, that was so stupid to begin with. Why did you even make drawings of it, But no, we've got the great dark closet of history.
But you don't know the good ideas until you see the bad ideas.
True.
That's true, right?
Yeah, I have to be aware of that, yeah.
Yeah, at least to a certain extent. And was there ever a project that you saw being developed at Disney that you weren't assigned to, and you were just like, I wish I was the one working on that? Did you ever have one of those?
No, I don't recall a job that would have been a super job that I was not assigned to.
You were already on all the super jobs.
Yeah, you kind of were.
I think in hindsight, you don't realize it at the time, but the things that I was first handed by Walt, the first 12 years working with him, and then other things that came along later, they were right up my alley, and I was thrilled to death to work on every one of those.
And very impactful, too.
Yeah.
So, we talked about your favorite thing that you designed at Disneyland. Let's talk about non-Disney things that you've worked on. And you've worked on quite a few things, like we've mentioned King Kong, even the sinking ship in Las Vegas at Treasure Island. What is your favorite non-Disney thing you've designed?
Well, there's a whole bunch of them, because some of them are really radical things. The one I thought was the most interesting was only a 5-week job, and that was the flying saucer at the closing ceremonies of the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. You can still see that on the YouTube today. People are still trying to figure out how that thing worked and what it was. But it was a job that I kind of inherited from another company that was failing at trying to get it completed. Handed to me, and of course, luckily, I was the president of GURR Design Incorporated, so I was a business entity, so I could work with several other companies very quickly and design that thing. Very risky. It was about 50-foot diameter, had about 600 lights all together on the thing. It had a little jet engine running a generator. A lot of suppliers built little custom pieces of equipment for it. Had to be hung by a helicopter. Testing and adjusting that thing in the days before the show. Since it was my design, and the helicopter company said, okay, as we test this, you are going to hook it up to the helicopter. A lot of people don't realize that you go much further in the design than you had intended, but that was the rule. Okay, Gurr, you designed that sucker, and you're responsible for it working. And Western Helicopters has been hired with a Bell 314 Big Lift, and the way that works is you have the spacecraft in a hidden fenced area near the sports arena, and the helicopter will sit just outside that fence. And then when you're ready to go, he will go up in the air, and you have the cable that you bought, and you got it in your hand on top of your 12-foot ladder, and you're told to hold the loop on the cable steady, and the helicopter will drive its hook into it. Which means the helicopter's right over the top of my head. Now, as it approaches, there's a lot of wind, but as soon as the helicopter's over the top of you, there's very little wind, so it's okay.
That's insane.
And then he's got a hook on it, and then I'm told to stay in one spot, and he will then raise straight up. And then when he's got a hold of the spacecraft, which I forget how much it weighed. It was a little around 3,800 pounds or something like that.
How wide was it?
50 feet.
Wow.
Jeez.
Then the wind started.
Yeah.
No.
And then I'd have to stay at the ladder, and he comes back, and then we do it backwards. He brings it over the top of my head, lets it down, and then you move sideways to where the cable connected. And then I take it, and then he drives the helicopter out of the hook, and then I, terrified, come down that ladder. Now, we did that probably 7 or 8 times, testing, and those are the things that are quite beyond design.
Yeah.
A little bit, just a tad.
But the pilot was always always very nice. He said, Bob, the reason I want you to stay on the ladder is if I lose power, I'm going to fall on you and you will die in the fire. But if you were to try to run, when the helicopter hits the ground, the flying parts will kill you anyway.
Jeez.
So stay where you're at.
What? How's that supposed to make you feel any better?
You die quicker.
I guess so. I mean, I guess
Yeah,
it's
so-
slightly comforting.
Yeah, so that job was had some very, very interesting characteristics. But at the same time, every night I had to come home and do all the finances because we're buying materials, I'm paying labor. I had to file 1099s on everybody that helped me with the thing, and actually made a profit.
Wow.
That's
that
great.
whole thing, and I didn't get killed.
Yeah. That's
Which
the
is
best part.
which is always a plus
Yeah, right.
in the end. That's ridiculous.
Other jobs, for example, Michael Jackson came out to the shop where I was doing some work for a company and wanted to know how animation is done. And at the end of the meeting, he idly says, "Can you design custom lightings for my up-and-coming show?" I know nothing about rock and roll. I really didn't know who this 26-year-old kid was. I knew that about 2 weeks before he got his hair burnt in a Pepsi-Cola commercial. But he was very polite, very quiet, and I jokingly said, "Well, why don't you get up in front of the room here and dance a few bars? I'll see if I figure out what you want," which kind of appalled some of his people. Oh, his brothers were there, too. They're very, very polite. And then his project manager took me aside and says, "Bob, we got to talk." And then I had to help Michael get out of the building because the girls wanted autographs and stuff. But anyway, he said, "You're the first guy that has responded to Michael's request." And so within about a 2-hour discussion, I got the job.
Wow.
And that was a 9-week job to design custom lighting. I knew nothing about rock and roll. But see, here's the point. Every time you do a job that you've never done and it's never been done before, look at the people you meet, all the expertise they have. You learn how stuff works. I'm with a bunch of super expert guys, most of them from England, lighting, sound, stage design, portable equipment, bunch of venues for an entire summer, stuff I never knew anything about, but look how much I learned by doing a job like that. And then the joke was, normally you specify lighting equipment. You know, it's all lighting instruments, rigging and stuff. And then at the end of the show, you turn it back in. Michael wanted something nobody's got. And he couldn't find anybody to build stuff because that's not the way that industry works. Mm-hmm. So he went to another industry, which was our industry, and asked me, "Can you do that?" And I said, yes. And then I figured out something. And without knowing about his industry, well, he got exactly what he wanted. He wants something nobody else had, and he got it by going outside his normal line of work, let's say, for that industry. Very smart move on his part. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But a great learning curve for me to learn how that industry works.
That's cool. Just every single job that you do, you end up learning something new that you could take to the next job if you wanted to, which is nice.
Oh, that's perfect. Especially the last great big one, of course, was a sinking ship in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Because that's a massive job. It was about a $13 million job, just the sinking ship
gracious.
Part of it. Yeah. And it had to be a never-fail thing because I had heard that job was on the street. And I kind of jokingly told some of my friends, I says, "Steve Wynn is crazy. He's going to build another new hotel, but it's not going to have a volcano. It's going to have a sinking ship." And I thought, oh, who in the world's going to get that thing? And it turned out the day before he was having a major press party about the entire hotel and project, Steve Wynn has a company called Atlantia Design. His younger brother was president of the company. He was in total desperation. He calls up Tony Baxter at WDI, because everybody's friends, gets Bruce Gordon to come over and talk to me, and I'm a consultant for Disney's R&D, and says, "Get an airplane ticket and go up to see Steve Wynn in the morning, and the two guys from Technifex will meet you up there." So here we are in a meeting, and Steve Wynn says, "Okay, who's going to sink the ship?" And we put our hands up. Again, a 2-hour meeting, fleshing out different ways you could sink a ship. And at the end of that 2 hours, he says, "Okay, guys, you got the job. Go home. Give me a preliminary price on Friday. Goodbye." No handshake, no boilerplate, nothing.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
That's the way businesses work in Las Vegas. That is so not organized companies like a Disney company.
Yeah.
The job moved along very swift. In my opinion, almost no problems at all. It was a massive job. 2 great big ships. One of them had to move 180 feet. And here's the thing. Normally, when you have a risky show, you put it on the back of your venue, and you put it behind walls or curtains or hide it in the building when it doesn't work. And Steve said, no, it's going to be on the sidewalk in front of my hotel, and it's never going to fail.
That's
okay.
That's a little scary.
I think it sank about 16,000 times over the years.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But it had motion, water, underwater equipment,
Yep.
heavy electrical, sound, fire, live stunt people, safety mats, all kinds of stuff.
Probably easier to say what it didn't have.
Yeah, it was a massive show, especially all the fire effects. But machinery-wise, along with Technifex, who did all the rest of the show, I did the ship part. And it was just sort of like a normal job, and then they put it out to bid, and then the winning bidder came in, and they got the contract for the job, and then the president of the company that was going to build it took me aside and said, you know the most about this design. Would you be willing to do the construction drawings? And I looked at the guy and I says, I've been working my way up to be the president of my own company and a chief engineer and this and that. And you want me to be a draftsman? Yes, you know the most about it. And I quickly thought, I got a Macintosh. I'm really fast. I use Ashlar Vellum instead of another program. So I raised my rates in my mind, and I gave him a price. And he says, go, you got the job. Just like that. So I wound up making 100% of all the drawings for both ships, everything. And the production drawing is quite different. That is a lot of work. But I had a Mac. I could go really fast. I could DFX the files every day to 2 shops, one in Las Vegas, one in Utah. And one day I was up in the shop in the one in Las Vegas, and I was walking around because I would go up every 2 weeks to see the progress, and I heard a couple of welders talking, and they said something like, oh, we're going as fast as we can. They tell me there's some old guy in a town in L.A. with a Macintosh, and we can't even keep up with him, and we got 63 welders going here. and I thought, whoa, that one.
Confidence boost.
No, because I came up with a simplified drafting method that broke all the rules that normally Disney or organized companies would do. You can have documentation requirements so strict that you choke the work. Mm-hmm. And I thought there's got to be simpler ways that I'd seen other people do over the years. So I came up with a very simplified way that we went right straight to the design. Even simple things like an engineer would be told to specify a hole. Well, you specify it, and then you have the tolerances, plus or minus all this stuff. Welds, every weld has to be totally specified. I talked to the shop manager in Las Vegas, and I said, I am going to give you a nominal fractional specification for a hole, for a bolt. You get to pick the exact diameter of that hole to fit the bolt you like, and then you write in your specifications, and that will save me all that time. I will design the welds that are easy to do, but I will not specify anything to do with the welding, which means there's a ton of drafting I won't do. And you get to pick your welders get to pick the welding code they like. Now everybody's happy, but this is not the way industry works.
Yeah.
But everybody was happy, and we went really fast.
It's interesting. It's almost kind of like what Walt was doing with you earlier, where he would give you a direction and say, like, this is what we're looking to do. And then you had the freedom to kind of do it the way you wanted to do it. And that was what you were doing with them. You said, okay, well, here's what we're doing, but I'm giving you the option to do what you feel is correct in this situation because this is what you do. So that's kind of cool. And you're almost taking what you learned from that, what Walt did with you, with these guys.
You hit the nail on the head. In 45 years, what I learned way Walt Disney got people to do stuff so fast and so simple and so easy, I use those lessons all the way through 45 years of doing stuff. Mm. And that's why the stuff was fast, it was easy, and almost all of it worked really well.
And if you had advice for anybody who's looking to get into this industry, because the industry has blown up since you've pretty much established the theme park industry, really, with Walt Disney. Everything's really blown up, and everyone at the time when you were doing it, there isn't a theme park class that you can go to. Now there almost is, to a certain extent. But if you had advice for the people who wanted to do what you do, or do what Tony Baxter does, or what anybody else does, what would your advice be for those people?
I'd return to the opening statement. Choose your parents well. Be curious. And I'm deadly serious about being curious about everything. You want to collect as much of the realities of the world as you can and put it in your head. You remember, you're born with a 7,200 RPM hard drive with a lot of sectors, and there's gigabytes of space in your head, and it's your job to fill that space, fill all those sectors your entire life, because you now have a dossier of endless amounts of information, some of which you will be able to use, a lot of it you won't, but you will have fortified yourself to be able to do anything anybody ever asks you without any fear.
That's awesome. That's the best kind of advice that you could honestly give anybody.
Just never stop learning.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Never stop learning. And I feel like that's what we try to do as people a lot. So I'm going to be an Imagineer now. No, I'm not, because I'm really bad at math. Really bad at math.
Well, there's a difference. A lot of people will come to me, either a youngster or somebody in their 20s, or parents particularly, that says, "Oh, my daughter wants to be an Imagineer." And I stop them cold right there, and I says, "You want to do Imagineering work, not be an Imagineer." There's a giant distinction. Mm-hmm. See, the problem is Disney is so popular, Imagineering is so well known. A lot of people are blown away by everything they see and experience in Disney parks. And which would be a normal reaction is, "Oh, I love that work. Oh, I want to be an Imagineer." Well, maybe not. Doing Imagineering work is what you're really asking about your dream that you've got.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to back up into some realities, and I've mentioned these realities now. You have to take a good look at your interests now. You might be 15, you might be 20. I always ask people, I says, "What turned you on at 5 years old?" And sometimes they look at me, "Huh? What do you want?" And other people, when I ask that same question, they just light up and tell me the stuff that turned them on at 5 years old. And then I ask them some more questions about from 5 years all the way up to leaving high school. And the ones that are really interested, they're the ones that were curious. Those are the ones that spent a ton of time on their own time learning about everything they could. But I do run across the majority of people. They've got a electronic device. They're texting like mad. They've suddenly decided they want to be an Imagineer, and they're 15 years too late. They've lost the time that they should have used to be ready to be able to do Imagineering work. I mean, it's a blunt answer, but that's what it amounts to.
That's interesting. And, you're talking about being a kid. And for me as a kid, theme parks were always something that were always an interest. And for me, it wasn't like cars or automobiles. Theme parks were always the interest. And it's funny because you're building all these things from having dissected cars and automobiles, and you're making these theme parks. For me, I would look at that, and I would try to dissect the theme parks. I would look at effects and things that you worked on and what worked on and everybody else worked on, and try to dissect how it worked. I think that's really fun. That it's almost it's like this curve that happens where these fans like me, I'm not an uber fan like most people. I'm a fan of the technology that's being used and how it affects kind of the viewing of it. I think it's cool that you're able to do that on the other side of this as well. Just kind of dissect it, and that's fun. But it's been incredible hearing all of these stories, and even the stuff that we didn't even know could have been built. So thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing all these really amazing stories. It's always a wonderful thing to sit down and talk with you.
Yes,
and
thank you.
Bring you a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Stay warm. It looks like the sun came out now a little bit now.
It's trying to come out.
It's trying to come out. The sun will come out later in the day,
No,
not tomorrow.
It's going to be another gorgeous day today. So,
Yeah.
but I appreciate you coming up here, and you had some very nice audio equipment here. Which when you're on an audio blog, the people your listeners can't see the equipment, but I can see the equipment. It's very, very impressive. So
thank you.
I know you've got a quality program here, and you do have a line of questions that actually allow a very lengthy answer, because sometimes blogs want to rip through a few things with short answers. But I think your program appeals to a lot of people because you do allow a long, detailed answer, which sometimes I could remember stuff I hadn't really thought about when somebody asked me a really good line of intelligent questions, particularly the philosophical backgrounds of why do people do what they do. That's where you learn stuff about people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the compliment. And honestly, like, when coming into any type of interview, and particularly like someone like you who has so much history, I don't want to ask simple questions. I want to ask questions that allow and facilitate a conversation that allow multiple questions underneath it that just kind of happen. And yeah, it does allow for the conversation to happen, which is nice, and have all those things kind of just flow. Because I'm not that type of person. For me, I'm not Peter Jennings or somebody who knows how to interview somebody. I talk to people, and so do you. That's
Not
how
quite
we
as
work.
much, but that's okay. That's why I have you.
That's true. I am the chatterbox of the couple, of the duo. But that's just who I am. I just like to have a conversation. So I at least try to base our show off of just a conversation, because then it feels like whoever's listening feels like during the conversation too, they're a fly on the wall of that conversation. So that's the goal, at least.
All right. Well, I appreciate your approach very much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So is there anything, I mean, I know you have the documentary. Is there any place that people can go buy that documentary?
Yes, the documentary, it's entitled Bob Gurr, Turning Dreams into Reality, because the reason that came about was there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people have, far-reaching ideas, but it's only words in their mind. And then the next step is sometimes it's printed on paper. But there has to be people that actually are going to take those thoughts and those words and actually take steps to make it into real stuff, like a sinking ship, a monorail. I mean, that's a lot of work that's got to happen. And I've always enjoyed being the first person in line when somebody says, I have a word or I have a printed word on a piece of paper and I want you to get started. That's where you do the turning into reality. Because if an entrepreneur can't find somebody to do it, his idea will never have a life. It'll never happen. So the people that can do that, for people who can think up ideas and designs in any kind of a direction, that is a crucial connection. And we try to explain that in that documentary. Now, the documentary can be purchased by going to 8-Pen Disney Products. A lady, her name's Carlene Thee. She lives up in Idaho. But at the same time, I do keep some around, and I do sell them wherever I'm in any kind of a public event. I'll have a few of them, and they're only $10 when I carry them around and sell them. So if any of your fans want to pay attention to where I might be in different events, I'll always have some with me that they could buy, and they come autographed. It's a 42-minute DVD. It's all done in high definition, and it will explain in more detail. There are 8 people that appeared in the movie that explained how I did stuff. So in other words, you will get this from everybody else being a witness to how people work. Folks like Craig Russell of WDI, the late Marty Sklar was one of the primary contributors. Chris Crump, another one, a few more.
Garner Holt.
Garner Holt, obviously. So it's their insight is what the documentary is all about, that people can learn a little bit more behind the scenes, particularly how under Walt we were able to do stuff so fast. And we use specific examples how that's done. Also, there's a little section on King Kong showing a scale model of the King Kong in motion, so you can see in detail how a thing like that was done. Mm-hmm. So 2 places, Ape Pen, Disney Products, and wherever I show up.
And you have a website too, correct?
Yes, there's, in fact, there's a guy's name is Dave Tavers. He does bobgurr.com. He does a Facebook. Anybody on Facebook can go look me up there. And I think there's 2 versions of that, and the people can post pictures, write notes. So there's I don't really post anything myself. Dave does all that, but there are interesting stories on bobgurr.com. You'll find things like a story of the fire engine that Ward Kimball had, and I drove it, and I visited it recently in a LA County Fire Museum. You'll also find that I'm an editor of travel videos. I went to Tahiti a year ago.
That's so cool.
And if you want to go to Tahiti and go to Bora Bora and see what Uncle Bob does when he's out in the world someplace, you can find all that on bobgurr.com.
That's
awesome.
So
much fun.
I did see a really cool picture of you at Burning Man. That was pretty cool.
Oh yes, I wind up doing adventurous stuff anywhere in the world. I'm alive. I love to just go do stuff. Burning Man's full of dust, and of course I got kind of dusted up there, so that's how the picture wound up on the internet.
It's fantastic. But thank you again so much for joining us. It was simply fantastic
Yes,
in many more ways than one.
All right, my pleasure. See you next time.
I, for one, think that was an absolutely amazing interview.
It was so crazy.
Yeah.
That we were there chatting with him and all that awesome information.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling sometimes that we actually got to do that. I feel very privileged to be able to do that.
I feel the same way, and I hope everyone enjoyed listening to it.
Yes, I really hope everybody really enjoyed listening to that. I know that I enjoyed re-listening to that conversation.
For sure.
So, but as you guys may have saw on social media, we are giving away a signed DVD by Bob Gurr of his documentary. Make sure you head over to social media, retweet like crazy to enter to win this signed copy by this Disney legend. It's going to be awesome, so make sure you do it. Look at our social media page, Theme Park Duo on Twitter and Facebook. But that brings us to the end of Season 1 of the Theme Park Duo podcast.
We made it.
It was a long, hard-fought journey.
I know.
To the end.
You having to edit out all of my flubs and mistakes.
I think there's enough flubs and mistakes from Nikki to make up an entire episode.
Probably.
I only wish that I saved all those flubs to just release as an episode for people to listen to, because it would have been really, really funny.
You should have.
There would have been a lot of bleeps.
Do that for Season 2.
Season 2, just save all of Nikki's, all of our mess ups.
Yeah.
Just an episode of mess ups, and then us narrating them.
Yeah.
So in this mess up, I cussed a lot. I don't know.
We don't have to narrate them.
No, you gotta narrate them, then it'd be fun.
Just make it like a YouTube video, like a compilation, and then just put I don't know, pictures of us up there. I don't know.
Your thought wasn't a full, complete thought, was it?
No.
I could tell. When your eyes start shifting around at the room, kind of looking for ideas, I can tell that the thought isn't fully complete. You're just kind of pulling for something. You're reaching out for something, and it's not there.
Well, anyway, thank you for putting up with me in my not eloquent way of speaking.
It is completely worth it. Or are you talking to the audience?
Both? Mostly you, because you have to spend hours editing it.
Well, that's fine. It is completely worth it to have you here next to me. It makes the show worth doing.
Yeah.
So, and even on top of, oh, by the way, I love you very much.
I love you too.
And even on top of that, it's worth doing for the people who listen. And we want to just express our sincere gratitude to everybody who's listened to us over season 1. You know, we jumped into this, as many people know, I was doing this from the Park Fanatic podcast and didn't want to stop podcasting, and so we decided to create Theme Park Duo podcast, me and Nikki. And I really wasn't expecting a lot of people to jump on board and listen to us or what it may be. You know, you don't really want to have expectations because they tend to get smashed really easily. And what has come out of this with the people that we've connected with, the people who love the show, the people who communicate with us, is way more than I could have ever expected.
Yeah.
And we are so unbelievably humbled by that and so thankful that we have all these people who enjoy listening to us ramble about really, really stupid things sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
even just all the people we've met, like whether they had already heard of the show or started listening after they met us, like at conventions or theme parks. It's just been a great year.
It really has, and it's really, really nice to know that we've made so many friends over that period of time through the show and through blogging and the events. You know, it's one big theme park family, to be honest. Like, man, that would be a really, really good sitcom. There's a large cast of characters here.
Yeah.
And that myself is, of course, included because I'm ridiculous. But we're just so thankful that we have all these new people in our lives and just friends of the show and fans of the show, and whatever you may be in whatever context it is, we're just really thankful that you're here and a part of our lives in any capacity. So, but to be specific on some of the people that we're really thankful for having, you know, there's a lot of different theme park outlets. There's a lot of different theme park bloggers and things. And we run into a lot of people at these events, and we run into a lot of different other outlets. And if we don't remember your guys by name, I mean, we're so sorry. It's just so many people to remember. But, you know, if we leave you off this list of people that we're about to mention, make sure you know that you aren't forgotten. We think about everybody that we run into and how thankful we are to have so many people that we consider friends.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that we consider family. So, you know, like people like Rick West at Theme Park Adventure, Sean and Carmel at Parks and Cons, Greg at Park Journey, Sean at California Coaster Kings, and we also even have Theme Park Connect, Theme Park Access, One Little Spark Podcast. Rich over at One Little Spark, he's freaking phenomenal. Made a fantastic friend, very close friend now through the podcast. Theme Park Conquerors, Horror Buzz, Norm, one of the guys who gives one of the best hugs. We got the Season Pass Podcast, Doug, and everybody else over there. They're always so amazing, and Nightmarish Conjurings and Hauntings. So those are a lot of the people that we consistently run into or talk to, you know, whether it be on social media or in person.
Yeah.
So we're just really thankful to have a lot of those people in our lives to really, you know, help propel us through this crazy world of theme park blogging and entertainment, because a lot of the time when you're doing it, it is difficult.
Yeah.
It could be very, very difficult because of the amount of time that you have to put into stuff. And yes, I mean, it's theme parks. It's fun.
It's fun, yeah.
But it does get stressful.
Oh, it does. Yeah, like needing to get a picture of this, or, you know, it's not, a few, like, I love doing it, you know, but then a few times you're at Disneyland, you're like, oh, just be carefree, you walk around, and we're like, no, we got to get pictures of this and this and this, and oh, now we have to Periscope. It kind of makes it a little bit of a chore, but we do it because we love it.
It's a job,
yeah,
for sure.
And we do make trips where we do nothing also, you know.
We make sure that we do that
Yeah.
because you need it.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have all these friends and some people we consider family that you know what we're going through, and it makes it that much easier to have people around us that know either a better way of doing it or just to commiserate with.
Yeah.
So, and we are thankful also for all the parks that have us out to their events or invite us to their events. Queen Mary, Knott's Berry Farm, Six Flags, all of them fantastic events, and we're just so thankful to have the opportunity to cover them as well.
Yes.
Because they're all so much fun. So, enough of the gushing, enough of all this ridiculousness. We need to end the episode. This is going to be a very long one.
Yeah, it's okay though. It's the finale. Finales are usually longer.
That is true. Finales are usually longer. I like that excuse. That's a good excuse. I should use that from now on.
Let's just call every episode a finale.
Yeah, and just it'll be like 4 hours.
2-week finale.
Yes. And even if we don't have
February
enough,
finale.
even if we don't have enough content, we'll just let it record nothing for like an hour.
No.
Why not?
No.
That'd be a funny joke.
No, it's absurd.
You're absurd.
I like the word absurd.
Absurd.
I don't like it when you say it like that.
Absurd.
Oh my gosh, I don't like the word anymore. Gabe.
Did I ruin it?
Yeah.
You hate the word moist.
I also... Okay, never mind.
What?
I'm going to open a can of worms.
Well, say it.
No.
Say it.
You tend to spoil Disney songs for me.
That's true.
Yes. I'm still resentful.
There's a couple songs that I made very dirty for you.
Yes.
I apologize.
I know. You ruined my childhood and my love of the songs.
I did not. That's too far.
I still love the songs.
Yes, and I did not ruin
And my
your
childhood is still intact and fine.
Yes, I did nothing to it.
Just the memories are a little tainted.
That's not true.
I'm saying all this with a smile on my face. I kid.
That's true.
But still.
I joke, I kid.
But still, like, whenever those particular songs come on, I look at Gabe, I was like, don't say anything. Let me sing along.
Give me the benefit here, and I haven't said anything in a long time.
I know, but I still warn you every time.
True.
Which means I'm thinking of it every time.
True.
I just wanted to let you know what you've done.
You're welcome.
No. Okay, I didn't want to rant. Gabe made me
You didn't
rant.
want to, and you did anyway.
Well, because you told me to.
I didn't realize you were gonna rant.
Okay. Sorry, everyone.
I thought you were just gonna say another word that
Let's
you
go
enjoyed.
back to where we were talking about how we love and appreciate everyone.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, let's end this episode. If you aren't following us on social media yet, what are you doing? What are you doing? Do it now.
Yeah.
Do it now. Now.
There's a very good video up there right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Currently, there is a video up there of Nikki getting pied in the face. Mm-hmm. Because we got a whole bunch of reviews from plenty of people.
Yes. Thank you so much, people. For
Yes.
I love
I think we got about 6 reviews.
I love and I hate that we got enough reviews on iTunes to get me pied in the face.
So that means a lot of people wanted to see you get pied in the face.
Apparently.
So, but yes. Thank you for everybody leaving a review on iTunes for us. It always helps us and brings us up in the standings and helps everybody enjoy us like you guys are right now.
Yeah.
But like I was saying, go follow us on social media right now. Go over to Twitter. Go over to Facebook and Instagram. Just search Theme Park Duo. And if you guys want to reach us over email, over the power of the internet.
The new snail mail.
Yes.
It's kind of replacing. It's like now the old-fashioned way of sending mail.
What, email?
Yeah.
What's the new snail mail then?
Email's the new snail mail.
Oh, I'm really confused.
I don't know why I just said that.
Okay, I'm moving forward. If you guys want to reach us over email, any comments, questions, concerns, love the show, hate the show, whatever it may be, let us know at themeparkduo@gmail.com. Yes, of course. And if you guys want to follow our personal Twitter handles, you can follow me at Laker793.
And you can follow me at NikkiM_313.
And for the last time in 2017, and for the last time of Season 1 of the Theme Park Duo podcast, always remember, there's always a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. See ya!
Thanks for riding with the Theme Park Duo. Make sure to gather all your belongings before the end of the podcast. Bye-bye.